Back in 2020, I had a school assignment where I had to take a well-known fairy tale and kinda turn it on its head. I chose to do this, called Blood Red Riding Hood, where Little Red Riding Hood actually killed the wolf instead of the whole grandmother fake-out storyline that the original had. And I really liked the idea, but I was still getting accustomed to more digital painting back then. Like, I was in the class for digital painting, I was still learning. And I want to try it again. So I'm going to take the same rough idea of Blood Red Riding Hood and turn it on its head once more, and wrote a story to accompany it. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The woods are a dangerous place, not meant for solo travelers. Not only is the terrain unpredictable with stark differences in elevation, fallen trees, and poisonous vegetation, but also the wildlife. Bears, snakes, and worst of all, squirrels, stalk their prey covered by thick foliage, though none of these animals could hold a candle to the mythical Blood Red Riding Hood. Only a handful of those who ventured into the forest ever came out alive, and the few who did all had the same eerie tale to tell, but many just chalked it up to them going mad after being away for so long. I've had my doubts, however. Perhaps if all the stories had variation, then maybe all of these people did go insane from the countless number of trees. There's too much repetition between every one, and not just in the tales themselves, but the people who live to tell them. What many people forget to mention is that the aptly named Blood Red Woods is located not too far from a maximum security prison housing the region's worst criminals. Or at least it was a maximum security prison. But since, budget cuts have made it a slightly above average security prison. As such, prison breaks have become more frequent, with many fleeing into the nearby woods to shake off the pursuing guards. One of the most recent stories that has made the rounds came from the survivors of a prison break. Due to the aforementioned budget cuts, 2 prisoners managed to escape beyond the prison walls. One was the woman known only as the grandmother, who led a crime family before she was arrested. The other prisoner was her personal assassin, the huntsman. By exploiting the gaps in the patrol schedule from the guards that were laid off and bribing the remaining ones, the 2 made it outside the prison walls with minimal difficulty. From there, they headed straight for the woods to be picked up by some members of the family known as the grandchildren. Before that could be done, the pair had to make it through the Blood Red Woods. As stories get passed down through word of mouth, details are subject to change. As I've heard the tale go, the grandmother and the huntsman ran through the woods when the huntsman stopped abruptly in his tracks. The grandmother was thrown off by the sudden stop and fell to the ground, unable to maintain her footing. Looking back, she saw the huntsman turning slowly in a circle, observing their surroundings. Through the howling wind, the huntsman heard an unfamiliar set of footsteps off to their side. He tried to look through the dense trees but couldn't see another figure, much less multiple ones. They had paid the guards not to pursue them. Could they have broken the deal? Could it be the footsteps of an animal of some sort? The grandmother looked frantically between the huntsman and the woods. Before she could say a word, the huntsman simply held up one finger to her and then put it to his lips. Straining her ears, she heard a faint rustling of leaves. Neither of them dared move. Unsure of who or what was tailing them, the 2 hoped they could stay safe only if they remained motionless. Unfortunately, the rustling grew louder and more violent, and suddenly, everything went silent. From the darkness, the wolf burst through the foliage and knocked the huntsman to the ground. A hooded figure cloaked in red dismounted from the wolf's back and slowly approached him. It took the sword it was carrying and plunged it into the ground, not even an inch from his ear. The figure leaned down next to the huntsman and removed the hood, revealing a full head of brown hair and sharp yet feminine features. Grandmother stood nearby in horror, not knowing what to do next, caught between reluctance to leave the huntsman behind, yet also hoping to escape with her life. The following sounds made the decision for her. First, the wolf pinning the huntsman to the ground let out a fierce snarl, followed by the sounds of claws tearing flesh, and finally, the huntsman's agonizing screams. Despite working together for years, Grandmother knew when to cut her losses. She bolted toward the woods in the opposite direction of her partner in crime, which turned out to be the worst possible course of action for her. Without batting an eye or looking away from the now bleeding huntsman, the girl in the cloak sent the wolf after the grandmother. In an instant, the wolf knocked her to the ground just as it did the huntsman. Only this time, the wolf went straight for the grandmother's throat with its great big teeth. The screams were short, but no less horrifying, and soon the only sound that remained was that of the wolf feasting on grandmother's corpse. Sensing there was no saving her, the huntsman took the opportunity to knock over the hooded girl and get to his feet. He clipped his ear on the sword next to his head while he was standing up, but that didn't stop him. He got to his feet and ran, but the head start only did so much. Soon, the hooded girl was chasing him on wolfback, quickly closing the distance, having much more knowledge of the forest than he did. He pushed himself to keep running, ducking and dodging around stumps and branches. He had an idea on how to escape the wolf girl, but he needed time to enact it. Still running, he realized he couldn't hear his pursuers anymore. Still on the move, the huntsman looked over his shoulder but saw nothing but trees, except now the ground was above him, then below him, then above him again. The huntsman had tripped and was now rolling down a hill, hitting all different kinds of rocks and branches on the way down. The huntsman hit the ground with a thud. As much as he had to get up and continue running, he simply couldn't. Instead, he lay there, face down, covered in dirt and pain. Before long, he heard the same footsteps from earlier. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the wolf and the girl scanning the area where he'd fallen, the wolf's nose planted firmly to the ground. The huntsman held his breath, hoping his scent wouldn't be picked up through the thick layer of dirt and mud covering his body. The huntsman's heartbeat got faster as the wolf and the girl got closer. The wolf was sniffing mere millimeters from the huntsman when the girl pulled his nose from the floor and told the wolf to move on. The two ran off in a direction that the huntsman would have run in had he been able to move. The huntsman stayed still for a little while longer to regain his strength. When he could move again, he carefully made his way through the rest of the forest, missing the extraction period by several hours and several miles. He made his way to a nearby town where he collapsed on the ground from exhaustion and his injuries. Next thing he knew, the huntsman woke up in the town's hospital. Nobody knew who he was or where'd he come from, but he remembered how and why he ended up there. He took the culmination of events as a sign to start over and live a more respectable life. He soon got a job in the town's bakery, making cakes and other desserts. Like I have said before, some people chalk these tall tales up to madness, but I have my doubts about that. I've met the baker myself. I've seen the scars. I know the truth. And there we have it, Blood Red Riding Hood 2.0. I really love how this one came out because when I first started, I was originally going to do the same idea where Red Riding Hood had killed the wolf, but as I was drawing it, I'm like, what if instead she was working with the wolf? Like she was commanding it almost. Kind of like that whole raised by wolves can communicate with the animals kind of storyline from like Tarzan and stuff. So something like that, I'm like, what if they were just like this combined force seeking justice from escaped prisoners? And I love the idea of making the grandmother and the huntsman from the original stories, to have those two be the opposing force and have this mob, this crime family run by somebody called the grandmother. I want to do another video soon or whenever, and I want to draw out the grandmother. I want I want like this sweet old lady, but in like this suit with leather gloves. I have the idea. I have like most of the idea in my head, but it's just, anyway, that's a future thing. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to, feel free to leave a like. It helps me out a lot. And if you want to see more videos, you can check out I'm going to make sure I get it right this time. Latest video, skip to the end. If you want to see more digital painting videos, you can check out the videos over here of some character design drawings that I did for my friend and his D&D characters. And there's also a whole bunch of story stuff on the channel. Feel free to check out whatever you want. My name is KyngPin Creations, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, everybody.